Well, good morning. How are you? So glad that you are here with us this morning at Christ's Table. I'm going to go ahead and take that question thing down. Sally will be here in just a moment. We are so excited that you're joining with us this morning for worship. We have a great morning plan for you. Maggie is going to be here this morning, and I have to tell you, I've heard the song that Maggie is doing at the very end, right after the message this morning, and it's one of the most moving songs that I have ever heard, and it fits right in with everything that we are talking about right now at Christ's Table. It has been a huge week. It feels like forever since we have been doing Bible studies. It feels like forever since we've done our book study, but we are back at it again. In fact, let me run over here. Just don't mind me. I'll be right back. We are back at it again here at Christ's Table with our book study. We've been going through, just started, in fact, this book, How the Bible Actually Works. This book by Pete Enns. It's incredible. I have never gotten the feedback on any book that we have ever gone through together or that we've sent in the boxes at Christ's Table like I have gotten from this book. It has been incredible. It's like the first chapter of this book, it's like Pete just drives a Mack truck through our traditional understanding of the Bible and just kind of opens it all up, asks some really important questions, and begins to, for me at least, what Pete began to do with this, and I've been a Christian since I was, 5 years old. I've been in church since before I was born, multiple degrees, and it's incredible that even after all this time and all the study that I've done and work in the Bible, Pete is, even in just the first chapter or two, filling in blanks that I've had, questions that I've had for my whole life. And so if you don't have this book yet, or you have not yet started reading this book yet, you need to do this. And we'd love to have you along in the book club with us on Wednesday nights. You can right there, www.christtable.today. Sign up for the email list there, and you'll get information on how you can be a part of those book studies and those book clubs. But if you'd love to have the book and you'd love to have the Bible study, you can be a part of getting that simply by going to this website, go.christtable.today/box. I've got about a dozen or so of those left for people who have never received a box before, or for those who regularly donate to Christ's Table. We just send these to you, and you can participate at any level that you want. Now, the other thing too that I want to encourage, let me see if I can get over here and do this. The other thing that I want to encourage is,
Hello.
good morning. How are you?
Good. Sorry, guys.
That's all right. It's very sunny here. I don't know.
It's very sunny. I like to glow.
Yes. Well, yes, you are. You are glowing. I was just holding this up.
Yes.
Yeah, the sun. It's very bright. It's very bright here. But this is the Bible study that we've been working through, started this week. You can be a part of us going through the journey of that. We're only 4 days in, talking through Nehemiah. We've already hit so many subjects, the conversations on Facebook that I've seen, and just the one-on-one conversations with people that I've had about this have been pretty amazing. There's a lot going on in Nehemiah that you wouldn't initially see, and that I have never ever heard taught. And so it's a little crazy, but this is in the box. If you want this, go to christtable.today/box.
We only have a few left. Come on, guys. Let's get those last few out of my garage.
Help us clean our house. You know, this view of the house looks really clean and put together, but the rest of it, we got 4 kids. School has started. I work from home. It's all
right. We love it.
It's a workspace, and I'm not a hoarder. I just don't like throwing things away.
Yes, or giving.
Which may be the definition of hoarding.
We should do a sermon on
No, because it might hit a little
I
too
know.
close to home. It's so fun seeing everybody sign on.
Yeah,
this morning.
good morning to everyone. Sorry, I have had stuff all weekend, and this was the first morning. I took it slow, and I took it a little too slow.
Now, so what's our? Gonna set these aside, but we would love to have you be a part of these. What is our question this morning?
The question this morning is,
It's question marks there.
what's
so
part?
I'm also
What's a
turning down
key part of your morning routine?
What's a key part of your morning routine?
Yeah, what can you like? What is the, what is it that you have to do?
That's a really complex question.
Okay, is that too hard?
What's your
favorite
part?
breakfast food? Is that
What
better?
is your favorite part of your morning?
Okay,
Or-
what's your favorite part of your
Or
morning?
something you have to do? Breakfast food.
He didn't tell me there were rules, and you only have 5 minutes. So you
Okay.
just gotta get something.
Just you're in charge.
Just tell us something about your morning routine.
Okay, tell us something about your morning routine.
It's the reason that question is there is I think it's very interesting. My morning routine looks very different in the school week than it does on the weekend, and I love my weekend that I get up and I have a whole different breakfast. I take my time. I actually drink hot coffee, not coffee on the way to school. Now Kevin does literally, even when
the
he
same
had to
thing.
go into the office, literally the exact same thing, no
I
matter
might
if
have
it's weekend.
Un poquito bit of OCD.
I mean, the exact same thing for
But
years.
if I am eating the same thing every day, I know the calories and the health
But it's
part
not
of it.
even
And
that.
if it's the routine, like if I do my routine in the same order, it's comfort. Routine to me is comfort. And
But-
routine to you is like straight jacket.
Yes, stifling. But it's also interesting because with his routine, he can be running late and he won't cut something out of the routine.
No, because the routine is the routine.
Where for me, if I'm running late, I cut something out of the routine. Like today, I didn't put my contacts in, so I can't see you because I was running late. But,
Hi, I'm your husband.
good. Cut things out of the routine. So my question is, what is it about your morning routine? Maybe a better question is, what is it about your morning routine that are you a routine person or are you a go
No,
with the flow?
I was going to say that nobody is answering this question, but
I know it's too hard.
but Sir Garrett Ray has
Sorry, it's not a
done
great question.
saved you. No, it is a good question. It just takes some. Oh, look at all these people.
Well, I can't look because
saving
I
it here.
can't see because I don't have my
Well,
contacts
we
in.
will
So.
put them up and read them to you. Garrett says making his pre-workout drink. Way to go, Garrett. Keep the health stuff going there and shower. Then I'm ready to go.
That is so fast, Garrett. I'm so impressed. Kevin's list
The
would be much
pre-workout drink.
longer.
Does that mean that you drink the pre-work? Do you work out in the morning?
No, but pre-workout drink and then shower. So that's a little complex. You
Yeah.
might have to give a second
I
comment
actually
to
put my
explain.
pre-workout drink before the workout.
Isn't that the word pre?
Well,
But-
it's actually a very energizer. It's like coffee for a lot of people. Pre-workout drink, very nutritious, but also gives you a lot of a
Is it
huge boost of
caffeine?
energy. Don't drink the pre-workout drink before you have to have your blood pressure taken, though. Ask me how I know.
I'm not going to comment.
No,
Anybody else
they
have
will-
some
They
fun
will
things that they do?
hospitalize. They will hospitalize you.
And,
Bratton's, good morning. Good morning, everybody down there, or up there, I guess, from us in Cleveland. Cameron said his favorite thing is sitting down for breakfast each morning.
Nice.
Cameron, I am very proud of you for sitting down
Yep.
for breakfast in the morning.
We've just
Most of our
started that
breakfasts
routine.
here have been on the go.
No, come on now. Since school started, we have done really well. And it's the first time our kids have sat down and not just grabbed something.
It's tough though, that trade-off. You can either take it slow in the mornings and enjoy yourself and have a lot of time and to eat breakfast and do that, or else you can have extra sleep.
Yeah, and coming from someone who's not a routine person, it was much easier to have more sleep because I could get it done. Right? Ramona has to eat breakfast. Yep. I feel you on that one. I used to skip that all the time.
Yeah. Loretta, actually, conversation with God each morning. Forego much lower priority tasks if something steals the time. Actually, I read somewhere that one of the great rules for life is Bible or God before phone. Most of us probably roll over and immediately reach for the electronic device to see what's gone on overnight in the news, who's texted, what's gone on Facebook. And somebody suggested before you grab the phone, either grab your Bible or just pray first. But center before you do that. And I thought, first of all, that's something that I could never do.
You're going to try it this week.
Okay.
It's a great idea.
But it is a really good idea, I think.
Yeah, we talked about that in our health class, that the statistics show people that get on their phone first are not as mentally healthy as those that get up and just embrace the day however you're going to embrace it without technology.
Nobody ever accused me of being mentally healthy.
Well, that's our goal.
It's very aspirational.
We're still working.
So Garrett has updated us that his pre-workout is his caffeine for the day and workout after the workday. Way to go.
It's impressive.
Yeah.
I just think it's important, Loretta, you hit on, and all of you have hit on it, is that our mornings start somehow. And so maybe putting something in our routine that helps us focus is important. I'm trying to do that as well. I like to sleep late, but we have moved our wake up time a full hour earlier, and I'm still running late. That's not okay. That's maybe because I'm not routine. That's not true, totally true, but kind of. But we're so thankful you're here with us this morning. So make sure
September 11th.
It is September 11th.
Yeah, 21 years.
Wow.
21 years.
20 years ago. We were talking about that this week with our classes because of the Queen dying. We were talking about how can they remember, events that they will remember even though they may not seem important to them at this moment. But yeah, we will address that a little bit in prayer. But we're just glad you're here, and make sure to think about someone we can send a box to, and jump in. I was going to ask this, if I haven't been there for the first week, am I too late, or can I jump in?
Jump in? Oh yeah, absolutely. You
can
jump in to the Bible studies. You can jump into all of it. It's not too late. You haven't missed anything. There's nothing I would say you even need to catch up on. So we would love to have you sign up for the emails. That's right there. ChristTable.today. That's the easiest way to know exactly what the schedule is. And well, here's Maggie.
Sometimes on this journey, I get lost in my mistakes. It looks to me like weakness is a canvas for your strength. My story isn't over, my story's just begun. And failure won't define me, that's what my Father does. Hey, failure won't define me, that's what my Father does.
Well, good morning. Welcome to Christ Table. My name is Kevin.
And I'm Sally.
And we are so grateful that you are here with us this morning. Thank you, Maggie.
I just saying something. If you missed the pre-conversation, we talked about Kevin loving routine. He does that same cadence. I don't know if you noticed. It just makes me laugh. We are glad you are here with us. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead. Welcome.
I'm told I also say the exact same thing all of the time. I used to get made fun of it. Like,
oh, I don't know.
So much so, yes, whenever we were in institutional church ministry, the stuff I'd say from the platform, apparently there was a rhythm and a routine to the words. And I guess now the cadence. OCD. Maggie, in fact, I'm going to do this. I hope you have something incredible to say, because Maggie has put together a Spotify playlist of these songs that some of it she's going to, I think, do one of them today. The last song today is going to be one that's in this playlist. Songs that have been meaningful to her on her journey over the last few years of some deconstruction and reconstruction. And so she's put together a reConstruct Spotify playlist of some new music. And so I'm going to literally right now post that link in the Facebook comments so that you'll have that if you want to go there. And I know that not everybody watches on Facebook, and so I will also put the link to that music in this week's email. So if you're not on Facebook or can't get to Facebook, then it will be in this week's email, which you can get, pardon my hand, right there by going to that URL. So yeah, say something wise and brilliant while I put this link up.
Well, I think it is important. We were talking about morning routines this morning. And an easy way, if it's overwhelming to you, to add something, I feel like I look terrible on the screen today, but whatever. That's a little too transparent, probably. If you need to add something to your morning routine to help you focus, we talked about, focusing on God in the morning, taking a moment to say a prayer before you grab your phone or whatever. But Spotify would be having this music and having something that you can just click on and hear as you get ready. It's kind of like this health journey I've been on, is not having to figure out where to find it is a super helpful tool. So you don't have to figure out where to find it. Spotify can be free. You don't have to pay for it. I love Spotify. We use it with our family a lot. But
I just put
it's there, and you should avail yourself of some music. I don't think they're all Christian. Don't go listen
to this music while we're live.
Yeah, I don't think it's all Christian
music. I hope they're not all Christian. How do you even define some of the most
I'm just saying, come on,
worshipful music I've ever heard is from Journey.
Okay. All I'm saying is if you're looking for hymns, it is not all hymns. I would love Maggie, if you're watching, when you're watching.
Is she watching?
Sorry. Maggie.
She's probably off doing self-care until she comes back in just a minute.
Maggie, I would love a Spotify with great old-fashioned hymns. I miss those. Isn't that weird?
Well, you can just Google that and go straight to YouTube.
It's a step. And then when I have to have a step, then I just... Yeah, on YouTube, you can only play one at a time. I like that Spotify, there's a roll.
Maggie's doing a hymn in just a minute.
Oh, yay. I love hymns. That's a really funny face you made. All right. So it is time.
Every face I make is funny.
For us to get into prayer? No.
Even the non-funny ones.
Is this prayer?
It is prayer. And I'm sure people are tired of us stalling.
I'm not stalling.
You don't need to anymore.
I wasn't stalling.
Okay. Well, if you have prayer requests, we love to pray for them. In fact, I got a message from our prayer team this week that I am now just remembering that I have not responded to, but I did get it. And I'm very thankful for the work that you've done. And you're right. All of those recommendations in there we will do. So I will respond to that email this week too. And if I don't, shoot me a text or something and say, come on. I may be OCD,
really
but responding to text is not one of my OCD things.
Yeah, you know the little bubbles at the bottom that tell you how many text messages you have? Our daughter has to have 0 bubbles. She cannot stand it. Kevin I do too, I have too many. But anyway.
I feel like every day is a new record.
All right, let's move on to prayer. So, but all of that Kevin was saying was to let you know that we really do pray for your requests. And we would love, our prayer team would love to truly know what is going on in your life. So if you're comfortable, you can put it in the chat. If not, send us a message. And our prayer team consists of just a few people that keep it confidential, but would absolutely love to support you in whatever you're walking through. Whether you are a vocal member of Christ Table or one of our silent watchers, please, please, please. I know one of our kind of silent watchers is due with a baby anytime soon. So we're praying for that.
Past due.
Yeah. And just love getting to do life with all different types of people across the U.S. So please, We don't know things until you tell us most of the time. So let us know, and we would love to be your support. So send us a message. But we are going to move into a time of prayer. Obviously, September 11th is a really big day for those of us that are over the age of 20. And for those of us that are younger, it's important for us to remember that it's a big day. You know, there's some history there. It definitely changed lives, changed how our country operated and how we saw safety. But the one thing it did not change is our God. And there's a lot of questions around that, I think, in the sense of, you know, how did God let things happen, or why, or all those things. But obviously this book, maybe I haven't read it, but has something to do with it, Kevin feels like. So anyway, we're going to spend some time praying, and put your prayers in the chat.
Yeah. So, lots of prayer requests coming in. So, let's pray.
Yeah. Dear God, thank you so much for today. I thank you for the new day. And God, I just pray for a moment that we just hit pause and let each one of us just kind of put our own words to what's on our heart and what's on our minds. September 11th is a big date for a lot of us. We remember where we were, we remember how life changed. But it's been 21 years, so that memory starts to fade a little. And God, no matter what September 11th brings up in our past, there are so many of us that September 11th, 2022, that we're dealing with catastrophic things as well, God. We see, I see in the chat things like, you know, gun violence. Obviously, my heart's been wrapped around this Liza Fletcher story and this mama, and just evil in the world. And so God, I'm going to give us a few seconds just to sit and kind of be with you, and use this time just to lift up any prayer or any question or any struggle personally for each one of us. And then I'll close this. So God, we don't always understand how you work, and we don't always understand why bad things happen. But what we do choose to understand, and it's a choice, and I'm thankful you give us this choice, but I choose to understand that you are still up there. You still can work disgusting, awful, horrific things for your good, and for our good. And the promise I was reminded of this week is that you didn't promise us it would be easy, but you give us the strength to get through it. I'm so thankful for those verses. I'm so thankful that you promise to give us strength to walk through whatever situation we're walking through. It seems unbearable at times, God. I think back to this date, so many years ago, and what people were walking through. It seems like a hollow promise, but most people that you talk to who walk through hard situations in life, and they're a little bit past it, and they can look back, those are the words they use, God. They use that you are present. You gave them strength. You gave them perspective. You gave them strength beyond what they knew they could handle. And so, God, we ask for that. We ask for that in every situation that people are walking through today or grappling with, or give them strength. Give them your supernatural strength, your supernatural peace, and maybe a little dose of your perspective. Sometimes hope and perspective are what help us continue to walk through hard things. God, I also want to thank you so much for the good things that you're doing. The things we look around and see a new fresh day, new opportunities, and good doctor's reports. And God, we are just so thankful that you are with us in the highs and in the lows. And we acknowledge that, and we thank you for it. God, thank you for the story of Nehemiah and how it's captivated our hearts and our minds, and that we can learn so much from it. God, I thank you that we learn through that so much about our own lives, that the story that may be being told about us is not necessarily true, but there may be a much more complex story behind it. And maybe it's one that's better or worse, but the good thing is you love us just the same, knowing the full story. Thanks for loving us. And God, I pray for this community of believers. I pray for those watching that we know are watching, those watching just kind of on a whim. I pray that you'll help us connect with one another. You'll help us reach out to one another, and that we continue to find people that need your hope, that need to reconstruct their faith, that need to have some perspective, and someone maybe just to listen to where they are, God. We're so thankful for you and thankful that you can handle our big questions. You can handle our struggle. You can handle our frustration. And you can handle our frustration towards what maybe someone even has done to us, for us, or around us in your name. You're bigger than all of it, God. We love you. We give you today, and I pray for Kevin and Maggie as they lead us. And I pray for each household as they sit and watch that it can be distraction-free and that we can truly plug in and see what you have for us today. We need you, and we want to be a light and breathe life into this world. And so together we pray, Our Father,
who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
So as we head into the next few minutes, we're going to sing some songs of praise together. And before we do that, we're going to read from Psalm 95 together. Would you read this with me? It says, "O come, let us sing to the Lord. Let us make a joyful noise to the rock of our salvation. Let us come into God's presence with thanksgiving. Let us make a joyful noise with songs of praise. O come, let us worship and bow down. Let us kneel before the Lord, our Maker. For the Lord is our God. We are the people of God's pasture, the sheep of God's hand." Praise to the Lord, the Almighty, the King of creation. Oh, my soul, praise Him, for He is thy health and salvation. Come, all who hear, now to His temple draw near. Join me in glad adoration. Praise to the Lord above all things, so wondrously reigning. Shelters you under His wings, yes, so gently sustaining. Have you not seen all that is needful has been sent by His gracious ordaining? Praise to the Lord, who will prosper your work and defend you. Surely His goodness and mercy shall daily attend you. Ponder anew what the Almighty can do, if with His love He befriends you. Joyful, joyful, we adore Thee, God of glory, Lord of love. Hearts unfold like flowers before Thee, opening to the sun above. Joyful, joyful, we adore Thee, God of glory, Lord of love. Hearts unfold like flowers before Thee, opening to the sun above. Praise to the Lord, oh, let all that is in me adore Him. All that has life and breath, come now with praises before Him. Let the Amen sound from His people again. Gladly forever adore Him. sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to feel, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did thy grace appear, the hour I first believed. My chains are gone, I've been set free. My God, my Savior has ransomed me, and like a flood, His mercy reigns. Unending love, amazing grace. The Lord has promised good to me. His word my hope secures. He will my shield and portion be, as long as this life endures. My chains are gone, I've been set free. My God, my Savior has ransomed me, and like a flood, His mercy reigns. Unending love, amazing grace. Unending love, amazing grace. Amazing grace.
I've been to a lot of churches over the years, and when I say a lot, I mean like a lot. I wonder how many churches that you've been a member of or visited. Would it even be possible to count? If you can count and it's easy, feel free to go ahead and put it in the comments. I'd love to just kind of see as we go this morning whether you've been to one or two churches throughout your life, or way too many to count, or maybe even none at all. For some of you, obviously that's a really easy task, but for others, it's downright impossible to even come close to compiling a list of all of the churches that you've gone to, because you've been to too many. And if you've ever been in a church for any length of time, you probably have encountered a building program. Now, churches are pretty notorious for building programs, especially here in the United States of America, because here in the good old US of A, bigger is better, right? And churches tend to judge themselves on the basis of their building. It was once said that you could measure a church by butts in seats, bucks in the plate, babies being born, and buildings being built. That's a lot of B's. One passage of scripture is almost always used for these fundraising ventures, and that is Nehemiah. Now, if you don't already know, Nehemiah is a book in the Old Testament that chronicles a portion of the story about the Jews' return to their homeland, Israel, after being conquered and deported by the Babylonians. Now, you might say that that doesn't sound like a very great fundraising story, and you'd probably be right. But imagine what they found whenever they arrived back home more than 50 years after being gone. Imagine that you left your home for 50 years and then just returned, and no one had done anything for those 50 years. Well, just like your house, much of what they discovered was in disrepair. And because they had to leave because of a war, a conquering army, most of what they knew when they had lived there had been leveled to the ground, and the rest of it had been badly damaged by the effects of time. So they discovered that much of it would have to be rebuilt because most of it couldn't be used. Now, during those years where they had been away from their home in captivity, other people, squatters, had moved into the area and reclaimed some of the land and the resources and the homes. And so they arrived home to find that there were other people living in their homeland and sometimes even in their homes. The Jews, well, they didn't particularly like any of these people. It may not be hard to blame them, right? They were Gentiles, which is a word meaning somebody who isn't a Jew. And it was kind of a slur to be called a Gentile. These people, the Gentiles, they weren't the people of God. They weren't special. These people were heathen. And you can almost hear the Jews shouting, "This ain't your land. Get off of my land." I don't know where that voice came from. But it really wasn't the Jews' land, let's be honest, right? Though they had been allowed to return to their homeland, it was now controlled by Persia. So it wasn't fully theirs. And that wasn't going to change. So they rebuilt as best and as much as they could, sometimes for no better reason than to keep people out. I guess that's kind of the opposite of churches who build bigger and better, because they don't necessarily want to build to keep people out. They want to build bigger and better to keep people coming, to keep people in. Now, let me hit pause here for just a moment and say that I am in no way, shape, or form against building things. And I am certainly not against churches being built or churches building bigger or more efficient or attractional buildings. Here's my point. My point is, I simply don't believe that in Nehemiah's case, Nehemiah should be the text that we go to in order to justify building programs or to fund building things on behalf of God. Now, I understand why people use the book of Nehemiah, the story of Nehemiah, to do this, though, because on the surface, Nehemiah is a building program success story. The re-inhabited city of Jerusalem needs a wall for protection and security, and there's a lot of opposition to that wall being built around the city again. But somehow, Nehemiah overcomes all of the financial obstacles, all of the people who disagree with the idea of a new wall being built, and he somehow gets the thing done anyway. On the surface, this whole story of Nehemiah and this building of the wall is a rousing success story. And as you may have heard, if you've heard Nehemiah taught during a fundraising season, God's name is used to support a lot of the wall project. From the very first verses, God is wrapped up in the idea of selling this wall, the fundraising for the wall, the overcoming of resistance to the wall, and even the building of the wall itself. And I got to tell you, pastors love that kind of story. It is like a perfect storm for a building program. Good leadership, good funding, good mission, and a good God's blessing on all of it. That story for a pastor like me is catnip. And it's also a lie. But our desire to want to believe that this is a positive story prevents us from seeing the truth of what is going on from the very beginning. And that is, simply put, the wall was not a good idea. It wasn't the right move, and God doesn't seem to be in support of it at all. In fact, they build the wall to do the very thing that God has told them not to do: keep people out. In Isaiah 2, the prophet of God of long ago had shared God's dream, had told what God's hope was for life after the exile, after the captivity that they had experienced. God had a very specific dream and hope and command for them in this current place that they found themselves at the beginning of the book of Nehemiah. And here it is in Isaiah chapter 2. This is a vision that Isaiah, son of Amoz, saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem. In the last days, the mountains of the Lord's house will be highest of all, the most important place on earth. It will be raised above the other hills, and people from all over the world will stream there to worship. People from many nations will come, and they will say, "Come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of Jacob's God. There he will teach us his ways, and we will walk his paths." So fast forward to the time of Nehemiah, part of God's hope had been accomplished by now. The temple had been rebuilt. Yay! The most important place on earth, as Isaiah calls it, had been built, the temple. It was raised above all of the other hills in the area. But it's that next part. People from all over the world will stream there to worship. It was that part where they went, yay! No. No, God, no. Let's build a wall around the temple instead, and let's keep people out. Enter Nehemiah. The wall was never supposed to be built, or at least the wall was never supposed to keep people out who wanted to come and to worship God. But that was exactly why they built the wall. To keep other people away from God. Because if they allowed people in and to worship God, that would mean that they would have to practice hospitality, acceptance, and inclusion of people they just didn't like, but of people they hated. Don't tell God. So God, suffice it to say, God was not a fan of this wall. And if you stick with the daily Bible studies over the next few days and weeks, by the end, it is going to be pretty darn clear that God is not a fan of this wall in any way, shape, or form, and that it is so counterproductive that it causes problems everywhere. Pastors don't preach those parts of Nehemiah, though. They just kind of tend to avoid those parts of Nehemiah during the fundraising and the building projects because it's messy and it's a little counterproductive. The thing is, though, that Nehemiah never says that God doesn't approve, and Nehemiah never says that God didn't tell him to do it. Does that make sense? It's like Nehemiah withholds the fact that God in the text never tells him to do this. Quite the opposite, in fact. As we said, Nehemiah is always talking about God, yes, but Nehemiah is always talking about how God is in support of it, but we never have on record God being in support of it. And that should really be a lesson to us. Not everybody who tells us or who says they are on a mission from God, not everybody who says that God sent them, God told them, God's behind this. Not all those people were really told by God, sent by God, or asked by God to do what they're doing. In fact, I might even say that if you have to tell people that you are on a mission from God, then you probably aren't on a mission from God. I want to say that again. If you have to continually remind people that what you're doing is on behalf of God and a mission from God, then it may well be that that person is not on a mission from God. So if someone tells you that they are acting on behalf of God, doing something that God told them to do, they might not be. And if they weren't told by God, if it isn't 100% clear, then you know what that's called? That's called manipulation. Always. Those moving and acting on behalf of God don't need to say or prove that they are moving on behalf of God. It will be obvious. And it will be unnecessary to tell people because everybody will know that this is of God, that this is miraculous, that this is radical, that there is no other way that you are doing and accomplishing what you're doing and accomplishing without it being God. You won't have to say it. It will be abundantly and completely and dramatically and miraculously clear. There's this pretty famous line from Shakespeare's Hamlet. You may have heard it. The lady doth protest too much, methinks. It's actually spoken by Queen Gertrude in response to the insincere overacting of a character in the play. Now, the phrase, though, today is actually used a lot just in general language and conversations to show doubt about someone's sincerity. So when someone continually says God told them something, led them to do something, or when someone continually indicates that if we dislike something, then we should take it up with God because he's the one behind it, I immediately question their sincerity. People who talk about God telling them, leading them, or needing to prove and validate what they're doing all of the time, to me, always leads me to think of this phrase, the lady doth protest too much, methinks. So let's review for a moment, real quickly, all of the mentions of God that we have stumbled across this week in Nehemiah. There aren't a lot, but they're important. Right out of the gate, Nehemiah receives the news that the city is in disrepair, that the wall is fallen, and it is described as a disgrace, which is an interesting word because the word disgrace is a feeling word, more than a practical word. You might say it's a security issue that the wall is fallen. Or you might say it is a terribly difficult thing to live in a city without a wall. But to use the word disgrace isn't a practical or functional word. It is a emotional, feeling word. It applies that there are emotions attached to this wall's absence, that it's not just about practical things like safety, security, stability, but there is something emotional attached to the wall's absence. And Nehemiah, the first time he speaks about God, is emotional about the wall. Verse 4 says, "For days I mourned, fasted, and prayed to the God of heaven." And pay attention to how his prayer begins in verse 5. "O Lord, God of heaven, the great and awesome God who keeps his covenant of unfailing love with those who love him and obey his commands, listen to my prayer." Now, in your Bible, my prayer is not going to be capitalized like I have it capitalized right here, but I've capitalized it because I want you to notice how he characterizes this. It's almost as though he's telling God more than he's asking God. This is my prayer. This is my request. This is what I want. Listen to my prayer. Hey, God, you listen to me. Now, y'all, don't get all holy on me. You know you've done this, right? You've told God what to do in your prayers. If you haven't, well, you're lying. Nehemiah then spends the remainder of the chapter cajoling God into having to rebuild the wall because of God's promises and his character elsewhere in the Bible. Word of the wise, don't tell God what to do, and certainly don't tell God what to do because of the way he's acted in the past. But let's keep moving. Nehemiah closes with, here in verse 11, "Please grant me success today by making the king favorable to me. Put it into his heart to be kind to me." You see, the focus here, even at the outset, is Nehemiah's plan and the need for God to support it, the plead for God to support Nehemiah's plan. So when he finally gets the guts to approach the king about permission to rebuild the wall, Nehemiah offers a prayer to the God of heaven, and then he replies to the king If it please the king, and if you're pleased with me, your servant, send me to Judah to rebuild the city where my ancestors are buried. Now, notice Nehemiah doesn't mention the wall. He says just generally, send me back home to the city so that I may rebuild the place where my ancestors are buried. Nehemiah only tells half the truth. Nehemiah is going back to that city to rebuild a wall. And if God was 100% behind this rebuilding of the wall, then it wouldn't be stoppable. And if it weren't stoppable, then Nehemiah would have absolutely no reason for concern or to hide what he really wants to do from the king. And that is the point. Nehemiah seems to know that this is not so much God's plan as it is Nehemiah's plan. Now, Nehemiah may think that this is God's plan. He may hope that it's God's plan. He may be on the spectrum between this is God's plan, this isn't God's plan, and I'm somewhere closer to this is God's plan. But he's not fully convinced that it's God's plan. We can tell that by the way he acts and the language that he uses. So, how does he know if God is in it? Maybe that's a good question for us. How do we know if God is in it? How do we decide that God is for something that is first our plan and our desire? Well, if it happens, of course, like a Ouija board, we decide if God is in it, if it gets support, if it gets money, if it gets love, if it actually occurs. Right? God, I really kind of want to do this. I think that it's your plan. I hope that it's your plan. So I'm going to go ahead and do it. And if it happens, then I will know that it was your plan. That is a terrible way to determine if God supports something. I might even say that that is a pagan way to determine whether or not God actually supports something. That is the worst way to determine whether or not God is in support of something that I have ever heard, but we all do it. If it happens, it must be of God. If it didn't happen, it must not have been. Oh well. I do it too. So how do you know, though? How do you know that your idea of success is God's idea of success? How do you know if the thing you want to do, or the thing that you see, or the thing that you believe that God may be calling you to do is really God's idea and not yours? Because just because something succeeds doesn't mean that it's a success, right? We have seen lots of things succeed that were not a success. And in the spiritual realm, in the following God realm, I can tell you, I have seen a lot of things happen that many would call a success, that in God's eyes were not a success, at least by his standards. Now, Nehemiah does eventually tell the king that he wants to rebuild the wall, but he kind of slips it into the middle of other building projects. I need to rebuild the city, or rebuild the wall, and I also need to build a house for myself. He kind of slides it in there just a verse later in the text because he kind of wanted the king to think that it wasn't his main goal, but it was his main goal and was from the very beginning of the story of the book of Nehemiah. The king allows it. The king actually allows it all. And he sends Nehemiah off to Jerusalem with his blessing and even with resources to make all of it happen. Oddly, though, the rest of the book doesn't focus on any of those other things that Nehemiah said to the king that he was going to do. The rest of the book focuses almost 100% on the rebuilding of the wall, almost as if Nehemiah was shielding the king from his true purpose, and maybe even the reader as well. So Nehemiah arrives in Jerusalem, and he takes no action for 3 days, and he told no one what was in his head or what was in his heart. The next chapter, chapter 2, tells us that when he arrives, I slipped out, Nehemiah writes, during the night, taking only a few others with me. I hadn't told anybody about the plans that God had put in my heart for Jerusalem. Now, let's go ahead and hit pause here one more time because I want us to sit here for just a moment. Nehemiah is really in a pickle at this point. That's an Indiana saying. Nehemiah is having to keep all of this a secret in order to not incite resistance. He's keeping it a secret in order to prevent any pushback. That should really be a clue to Nehemiah. It's a big red flare to us. If you have to hide what you're doing, it may not be of God. But I think honestly that Nehemiah is also trying to convince himself that this is the right thing. I'm guessing that there was a little voice of reason sitting on his shoulder in the back of his head, or maybe it was the Spirit of God telling him that this was the wrong plan at the wrong time, done in the wrong way. But Nehemiah keeps squashing that little voice by assigning it to God. And now, here, saying, God, put it into his heart. Did you see it right there? The plans that God has put in my heart, he says. Whoa! He knows that God did not place that plan in his heart. That was his brother and a delegation from Jerusalem when they came and gave him this sob story about the disgrace that they felt for not having a wall to keep the deplorables out, the unlovables out, the colored people out. And Nehemiah, needing approval and affirmation, caught this as being his ticket of value and worth as a queer Jew, which I know I just kind of blazed right by that. If it's a surprise to you that Nehemiah was a queer Jew, then you need to go back and listen to day 3 of the Bible study for this week. Watch day 3 of the Bible study. Either way, Nehemiah is well on his way to squashing that small voice of reason in his head. This isn't my idea. This isn't my brother's idea. This was God's idea. No, it wasn't. Super spiritual? Yeah, it is. Truthful? Not so much. Don't get all holy on me, though. You've done this. You've had what you wanted to do, but you knew that it was probably the wrong thing to do, but you wanted to do it anyway. You needed it, so you justified it by saying that it was God's thing, not your thing. It was what God told you to do. It was the right thing for the church. It was biblically sound. Yada, yada, yada. You lied. I lied. You lied to yourself first, then to others, and you're still lying to God about it today. But PK, it was something that God gave me, or God would have wanted this, or the end justifies the means. It all worked out for good. What does it matter how we got here? If we got here in a way that wasn't on the up and up as it should have been, who cares? And I just got to say, forgive me, you fool. What have you done? You have a choice to make. Nehemiah had a choice to make too. He could have admitted at this point that it was his plan, still continued rebuilding the wall, and then used it to protect the city, but still let outsiders to come to worship God. He could have rebuilt the wall. The problem with God wasn't that they wanted a wall. The problem with God was why they wanted the wall. Nehemiah does the right thing, building the wall, for the wrong reasons, which makes all of it wrong. Nehemiah makes the wrong choice here, and then he says it was God who told him to do it. Even in tomorrow's Bible study, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time, right here, we're going to see Nehemiah turn the rhetoric up to 11. Do you know what that reference is? Spinal Tap. Nehemiah is going to turn the rhetoric up to 11 and begin to leverage God in any way that he can to get what he wants done. And the rest of the story from here on out becomes a cautionary tale about building kingdoms to our own desires rather than building God's kingdom. And I don't want you to make the same mistake. I don't want to make the same mistake. You've got some plans, I bet. Are they your plans? Are they God's plans? Now, I want to say clearly that there is no problem with having your own plans in life. You're not a puppet of an angry, vengeful, and controlling God. Not at all. It's okay to have your own plans, unless your plans are in opposition to God's. And if your plans are in opposition to God's plans, or what God values, that is a far different thing. In a couple of verses, Nehemiah is going to sell the mission as them committing themselves to the common good. The language that Nehemiah uses is right, but it simply isn't true. He's calling them to do something that in the back of his mind isn't what he wants done. He's leveraging the right thing for the wrong reasons. And God would have been against building the wall at all for the reasons they want it rebuilt. What Nehemiah says here sounds good, but it's just not true. Nehemiah and the Jews here are committed to their own good alone, not the common good of all. And that is how we rightly assess our actions, whether they are in line with God and are good, or whether they are our own actions and our own ideas that are against God. Are they for the common good? Or better said, is anyone harmed by my plans? I really think that that is the question. Is anyone harmed by my plans? Sometimes the person harmed even is me. If anyone's harmed, it's not for the common good. It's not of God. So if the answer is yes to is anyone harmed, then I doubt it's God's plans, and I'm guessing it's yours. And as we shall see with Nehemiah, that is a fiefdom that you want to avoid building. Never spend your time, money, energy, or influence building a fiefdom.
So I want to sing a song for you today that's really personal. A couple of years ago, I began deconstructing. I didn't know that's what it was called at the time. I just knew that something wasn't working. And for me, it felt a lot like there was this fabric of faith, right? And I began pulling strings out of it. And when I'd pull one, another came loose, or there was a tangle that formed that I hadn't expected. And that faith was also my identity, my occupation, so much of my family relationships tied up there. And so I began wondering, what does it really mean to walk with Christ? What can this actually look like? And are my questions valid? Is there an answer? And so when I heard this song, it's called Unraveling, it was like balm for my heart to hear that someone had put in words what I was experiencing. So I want to sing this today, but I've also put it in a Spotify playlist called reConstruct with some other songs that were helpful or meaningful to me and still are meaningful to me as I'm figuring things out. So I want to sing this for you today. The link for the playlist will be in the comments, and I hope that it's helpful for you. I'm coming apart at the seams. Everyone's pulling at me, and I am unraveling. The smile isn't quite what it seems, but it works well to hide what's beneath, where the pressure is staggering. In the unraveling, Father, unravel me when I can't feel a thing. Have mercy and let me live. I know it's done, but I have been numb for way too wanna survive anymore. I wanna feel unravel me. I'm coming apart at the seams. It's worse than I thought it would be, but I've never been happier.
Maggie, that was unbelievable. And if you want to hear, like Maggie said, that song and other songs that she has put together for us into a playlist on Spotify, then visit that URL, christtable.today. Sign up for our email list there, and I will send out that link this week. Or you can go to Facebook, and the link to that playlist, including the song that Maggie just sang, Unraveling, is included in the comments to this Facebook video that you are watching right now. Before we go, let's participate in communion. I hope that you have something close by that you can utilize to participate in communion with us. If you have bread, wine, grape juice, that's great. If you have something else, doesn't matter what it is to eat, to drink, grab it, go get it right now. I'm stalling in order to give you time in order to go do it so that you can participate in this rite, in this rhythm that has been a part of the followers of Jesus Christ journey from the very beginning. We see the believers in Jesus doing this in the Bible, and it has continued until this present day. Why? Because it reminds us that we sit shoulder to shoulder with a community of faith who is on this journey alongside of us. It is an opportunity to remember Jesus and his words and his love and care for you and for I. And also it's an opportunity for us to remember forgiveness. And wow, isn't that something that I need? Isn't that something that all of us need regularly? Forgive ourselves, forgive others, 70 times 7, which is just a really creative way of saying more times than you can count. Forgive. On the night that Jesus was betrayed, tortured, and executed, he shared a meal with his friends, and at that meal he took some bread from the table and he broke it, and he gave it to his disciples, and he said, "Take and eat this, for this is my body, which is given for you. As often as you eat this, I want you to do so and remember me." And so Christ, as we eat this bread or whatever it may be that we have in front of us, remember you. And the text tells us that at the end of the meal, Jesus took the cup that was on the table and he passed this around to all of his disciples. And he said, "Drink all of this, for this cup is a new agreement, a new covenant between you and between God for the forgiveness of sins." There it is. As often as you do this, remember me, remember my forgiveness. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May God's face radiate with joy because of you and bring you peace. And may the peace of Lord Jesus Christ go with you wherever he may send you. May he guide you through the wilderness, protect you through the storms. May he bring you home rejoicing at all the wonders that he has shown you. And may he bring you home rejoicing once again soon into our doors. Well, it has been good to be with you this morning. Looking forward to continuing the journey about Nehemiah. It is a crazy story, and it only gets crazier and more intense as we go. And so you can be with us tomorrow morning, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time, right here where you're watching us right now. And until that time, may God bless you and keep you. Have a phenomenal week.